Redux DevTools provide us a debugging platform for Redux apps. It allows us to perform time travel debugging and live editing. Some of the features in the official documentation are as follows. Redux DevTools lets us inspect every state and action payload. It lets us go back in time by cancelling actions. If we change the reducer code, each staged action will be re-evaluated. If the reducers throw, we can identify the error and also during which action this happened. With persist state method store enhancer, we can persist debug sessions across page reloads. There are two variants of Redux DevTools. The first one is Redux DevTools. It can be installed as a package and integrated into your application as from the official GitHub account. The second variant of the Redux DevTools is the Redux DevTools extension, a browser extension that implements the same developer tools for Redux that can also be installed, and I will show you the installation process later on in this video. Developer tools are to power up Redux development workflow or any other architecture which handles the state change. It can be used as a browser extension for Chrome, Edge, and Firefox, as a standalone app, or as a React component integrated in the client app. So the installation is different for each of the browsers. So we will see that according to whatever browser you have, either Chrome, Firefox, or any other browser. So starting from version 2.7, Windows.DevTool extension was renamed Windows.Redux DevTool extensions. So to install Redux Developer Tools extension, you can go to your browser and just type Redux DevTool extensions. My browser is the Edge. You can go ahead for Chrome or any other browser that you're using. So you can see that you have the official Redux DevTool add-on. So here we will just click on get. And it will just download in a few minutes or seconds, and then you will have that tool inside your device. So you can see now it is added. So this is the extensions button, that is Redux DevTools. Next important thing what we are going to do is the installation inside of a VS Code. So for the official documentation, you can visit the Redux DevTool. Here you can find the usage and rest of the things, installation, configuration, integration, etc. So you can read all this. This is the official GitHub page. So now back to VS Code, we are going to install the package here. So for that we will run the command npm install -- save Redux DevTools - extension. So this is going to install it, and this will take a little bit of time. So when you are done doing that, then we will jump into our example. So after the installation is complete inside our VS Code, we have just started our server, and now if you can see that there is a Redux DevTools option. If you click on that, then you will get an option of to the left, to the right, open in a panel, open remote DevTools. So you can adjust it according to that. It will appear in a different window. So if I click on to the left, so it appears in a different window. If you want to open it in the same video, so we'll go to inspect, and then we'll click on the extra button here, and then we will click on Redux. So here you can see that we have a tree of the components. This is not a complex example, so we will not see that much of things. I have an actions, reset, revert, sweep, commit, all these functions. We have filters. At the below we have inspector, log monitor, chart, RTK query, and actions, state, difference, and trace. So we will be using all of these very soon, but this is pretty much how it is going to appear. And we will also have an option to debug. So let us jump into our example. First of all, I'm going to create a new folder inside my source. So this folder is named user. Inside my user, I will create all the components. So the first component name is user avatar.js. Here I'm going to import a React from React, and then I'm going to export default, a source which I'm going to pass as the argument, and then an image tag which has a style of float, left, and the source is assigned to source. The alternate text is avatar. Now we will create our next component. This component is named user details.js. So first I'm going to create a const. So again, import React from React. Next we are going to import the connect function. Connect from React Redux. Import user avatar. And next we are going to import selected user details from a file named selectors. So we'll create that file in the same repository. Now const user details, passing the argument user and user ID. So if not equal to user, return and h2 select a user. And now I'm creating a const. Here we will pass username, ID, first name, last name, avatar and email as the argument, and assign it to user. Now adding the return statement. Here we will have a section. Inside this section, an h2, you are viewing and display the username, profile, and then an image which has the source, avatar. Now we will be having a list. So ul, inside this we will be having different things like the username assigned to username. Next we will be having email assigned to email, the ID assigned to ID, next is first name assigned to first name, and similarly the last name assigned to last name. So after this we will add our default statement of export. So export default connect, and here we are passing state comma props. The user is assigned to selected user details with state as an argument, and the second thing is user detail. So we are connecting these two. Now the third thing which we are going to create is the user list. User list.js. So let us create the functional component using RFCE, and then we will replace this as const. Now after importing this, we will import connect from the React Redux, import select username, usernames list, and select user loading from selectors. So we haven't created selectors, keep that in mind, we will be creating that. And last we will be importing a reducer, we haven't created that right now. So select user from reducer, we will create that later on. Const user list will be taking a few parameters like users loading, dispatch select user, and then we will add an if statement. So if loading, then return and h2 loading. Inside the return we will be adding select on change e. This e is going to call on dispatch select user, and again e dot target dot value. Next we are going to add an option, and inside this we will just display 3 dots. Next we will map our users, so users dot map user, it is going to check option value user dot user id, and then user dot user name, Now in the export default we will be adding connect. Inside connect we will pass state comma props. Now the users is set to select user name list, usernames list, and pass state. Next we have loading. This is assigned to select users loading, users, and this is also users loading. Again passing state. And dispatch. So dispatch selected user. This is going to take user ID, and then dispatch select user with user ID. After this we will add the user list. Now next component which we are going to create is users page. So this is a class component, so RCE import connect from React Redux. Next import request users from reducers. Import user details, and also import user list. Inside this we are going to add component did mount. So if this dot props dot dispatch request users, this dot props dot dispatch request users. And then the render. Inside this we are going to add react fragment, react dot fragment. This is the parent component for user list and user details. In export default we are going to add connect, passing null and dispatch. Here dispatch request user. It is going to dispatch request users. adding user page. Now we will be creating the reducer file. Reducer.js const initial state selected is assigned to null, user ID is assigned to an empty string, empty array, users by ID. Next, loading set to false and error set to null. Now const reducers export const request users. This is assigned to users / request users. Export const request users the type is set to request user and the payload now reducers, then passing request users, here we will have state and payload. Now this is going to make a copy of the previous state. Error is still null, loading is true, next we have a const request users success set to users / request users success. Again we will have the same statement of export const. This will be the users success taking users as the argument, and then the type is users success. The payload will have users. Then again reducers taking request user success, state and payload. Payload is assigned to users. giving back state, user IDs. This is set to users, dot map, user dot ID, users by ID, users dot reduce, and inside reduce we are going to give user by ID comma user, then users by ID, user dot ID, and then user. We will also return users by ID. And last, the loading is set to false. Next we are creating our const request user failure. So instead of success it will be failure. It is set to user slash request user failure. Export const request users failure, taking error, the type is set to request users failure, payload is of the type error, meta is set to error true, reducers taking a request user failure, and then state comma payload. Here payload will be set to error because there is no output of, here we are getting an error, so we will pass error as the argument. State error and loading to false. Next is select user. So const select user assigned to user slash select user, export const select user taking user ID, type is select user, payload user ID. Reducers, select user, state, and then payload. This is set to user ID. Giving back state and selected user ID. Export default state, which is assigned to initial state, comma action. Here the const taking type action, and if reducers type, it is going to check for that, and then it is going to return reducers type along with state, comma action. Then return state. Now we are going to create another component, that is sagas.js. So import take every call, comma put from Redux saga / effects. So we will go ahead and install this, and then we will import request user success, request users failure, now the function is set handle request users, yield call console dot log passing request users. Now const response yield call, this is going to fetch the API. You will find the link in the description box. My API dot mock aroo.com/users .json key 53BCADF0. So this is the API that we will be using. Now adding a try statement. So const users, this is going to yield call response JSON, yield put request users success, passing users after try we will add a catch, catching the error ERR, yield put request users failure with error. Export default function, yield take every request user, handle request users. Lastly, we are going to create our selectors file. Selectors.js, export const select user IDs state select user state, passing the state as the argument. And I missed out some. So first const select user state, taking state assigned to state dot users, export const select users details, state and action, state and user ID. So here select user state, taking state dot users by ID and then user ID. Export const select selected user, then passing state select user state dot selected, export const selected user details, passing state. Now const selected user selected user, it will take the state as argument. If selected user, so we will return select user details with state and selected user, or we are going to return null. Next is export const select user ID, taking state and then select user state dot user IDs, export const select user names list with state const user IDs select user IDs state return user IDs which is assigned to select user IDs with state as an argument, return user IDs dot map user ID const username select user details state and user ID, return user ID and username. Now here select user IDs we do not need this statement because we have already done that, and then export const select users loading state and then select user state with state comma loading. Now we'll go to our index.js file and we will be adding our component here itself. So const saga middleware assigned to create saga middleware const reducer is assigned to combine reducers. Here the users is set to user reducer. Const store assigned to create store. Reducer comma compose with DevTools. Apply middleware passing saga middleware. Then saga middleware dot run user saga, and here we will add a provider. The store is set to the store, and we will be adding our component user page. Next we will import user reducer from user reducer. Now if we save this file and we look at the output, so now if we look at the output, then you can see I have an option of selecting a user, and I will get the details according to that. So you are viewing the profile and the profile name appears, and also whatever details like the email ID, first name, last name, and everything. Now if we open the developer tools, then you can see that I'm getting all the options, and I'm also getting the details of the actions, the dispatch and everything, and debugging is easy. So I'll see you in the next video.